Vivi, perdonen. En español, ¿cómo sería? ¿En español cómo sería esa frase?
It's recording right now, is it? Yeah.
Yes, I think
Okay.
so.
Thank you so much. What? La frase sería luz,
Sí,
un poquito de luz
sí.
dispersa la oscuridad, mucha oscuridad. ¿Ok?
No,
And,
lo de Lam decía, pero no importa, está bien.
una ovejita entre 70 lobos.
Ah,
Okay?
okay.
So I think we told it, I don't know if we told it in this class, but there was a king. I think I give this simile, right? A king is going to make a contest, and he says, whoever fills up this huge room to the most is going to win this contest. So we see there's 3 contestants. I don't know if we give it over in this class. 3 contestants. One brings rocks. So he's pulling rocks for weeks, to fill up the room. Another one is pulling bags of sand to fill up the room. And the 3rd contestant doesn't do anything. So, everybody's wondering, all these other contestants are working so hard. What is this? What is this contestant pretend? He's not doing anything. So the day of the contest, the contestant that didn't do anything, everybody, the other 2 contestants are showing, oh, look, I filled up this room with rocks. Very nice. And then I filled up this room with sand. Oh, very nice. You filled it up even more. And what does the 3rd contestant do? He just brings a light bulb and he lights it up. So who wins? He wins, because the light fills up all the spaces, and it does so effortlessly, right? If we see the dark of night and we say, oh my gosh, how is it ever going to be light again during the day? And if we would have to make light for the day, I don't know how many candles we have to light, but Hashem just puts the sun, and all of a sudden it's sunlight. So it's telling us it's like goodness versus evil. Just a little bit of good will disperse the evil. Okay. All right. So it's now they're gonna give us another simile, another analogy. And it says that okay, also that King Solomon depicts man's inclination for goodness, his divine soul, as a poor and wise child. Okay, so the King Solomon, he was the wisest person of all. And why was he so wise? Because he had an amazing capacity for Bina. Bina is the part of our brain that analyzes, that connects. And he could connect every idea to 3,000 parables. Like when Moses went up to heaven to get the Torah, it's because the Torah is considered like God's very brain. It's called Hashem's Chokhmah, it's brain. So these ideas are so lofty. That's why, he went up, because they're so lofty, they're aloof, they're beyond us. Hashem is more than infinite. So in order for Moses to get the Torah and bring it down doesn't just mean physically from the mountain. It means bring it down to a language, because I'm not a God, I'm a person, I'm a human being. So I need the Torah to be in a language that my ear can understand as a human being, because I'm a finite being. So that's also what it means to bring it down. So what does that, one second. Let me just mute everybody. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so what does as a parable or a simile do? It brings down the concept, right? If I have a concept, I want to teach a child, right? There's the most important lessons in life we teach children while we're playing a little game with them. It could be Monopoly, it could be tic-tac-toe, it could be cards, baseball, anything. Why? Because we want a very lofty concept, which is honesty. honesty. That's the way of Hashem. It's a way of life. So how are we going to teach a child? We're going to explain to him, if you're playing Monopoly and you have your cards, you want to be honest, you have your cards, you have to respect the other cards, don't look to the other people's cards, but you're explaining very, very high concepts, but in a way that the child can understand. So King Solomon was the wisest of persons because he could do this with 3,000 parables for every concept of Torah. Okay, and so one of the parables that he says is that the divine soul, he calls it a poor and wise child, and the animal soul, he calls it an old and foolish king. So the old and foolish king is the animal soul. Why? Because it's old, because it's the first soul that comes with a child. When a child is born, the animal soul, the soul that is going to make sure that he breathes and that he screams if he wants to eat, and it's all about taking, survival. That is what is the biggest force in him. So that's why it's called the old. It's an old king because it's king over the child. It's king over the body. But he says it's old and foolish. Foolish because of what it wants. I mean, yes, it's survival. That's very important. But then it turns into physicality and physical things. So it's foolish. It's like nonsense because all physical things are going to decay. And the divine soul, he calls it the wise but poor child. And why? Because it's a child, because it's younger than the animal soul, because it comes in to the body fully later on in life. It comes by parts, but by the age of bar mitzvah, that's why we celebrate a bar mitzvah, because it's a time when the divine soul comes more into the body, right? So it's a child because it came in second, but it's wise because it's carrying with it the wisdom of Hashem. Okay, are we together? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So this analogy that light will dispel darkness, and just as wisdom surpasses folly, is used to illustrate how wisdom is superior to folly. The superiority of light over darkness is manifest in the ability of a tiny ray of light, little bit, to banish a great deal of darkness. So in the Torah, they tell us, when Hashem sanctifies a war of Israel, few soldiers can battle a lot of other soldiers of the enemy, and nothing will happen to the Jews. So it's a little bit of light can dispel a lot of darkness. Furthermore, the light not battle darkness to banish it. The darkness disappears as a matter of course with the appearance of light. Okay. And that gives us, I think, great hope for today, because we're in a world of tremendous darkness, and it's telling us, just do good, just do more Torah mitzvahs, just be kind, do what Jewish people do, which is light up the world, and don't worry about the darkness. That will dispel the darkness. Okay. So the analogy means that just as light has superiority, power, and dominion over darkness, so that a little physical light banishes a great deal of darkness, which is displayed automatically and inevitably without any effort on the part of the light, so is there driven away automatically much foolishness of the klipa and sitra achra of the animal soul located in the left part of the heart. So the animal soul, its center, where it radicates itself, where it inhabits a person, it's in the left part of the heart. The divine soul, what it uses in the body is my brain and the right part of my heart. It's like the seat of where it is. Okay, that's just, it's more of a euphemism, because if a person gets a heart transplant, it's not that they're going to get the animal soul of another person. That's not it. It's the same thing with my cell phone. If I get a different cell phone, right, I'm not going to get the phone calls of another person. Rather, I'm going to put in my chip, and my chip is going to use this phone for my calls. So in the body, the most suitable organ and place for my divine soul is my brain. So it's telling us a lot about how the divine soul works, because it's about the world of ideas. The brain matter is grayish, is white, so it's cool. It can think, it can pause. Yesterday I was at a restaurant. While the waiter was attending to us, he started like a monologue by himself, and he said, "Do you teach your children patience? You know, people don't teach their children patience anymore, and patience is very important." Yeah, but where does patience come from? Patience comes from the divine soul, right? Because the heart, the animal soul is like an animal. The animal, it just wants, and it's passion, and it's red. So it's this parallel, or this explaining spiritual concepts and giving it a body language. It's more for us to understand the characteristics of it. Okay, and the animal soul, which it says the seat is in the left part of my heart, it's passionate, and everything we talk about the heart, right? It's a heart on flames. It's a heart, it's passion. So sometimes it doesn't think. Now, if they already have told us that the brain will rule over the heart. So the brain, because it's water, it's cool, can put out the fire of the animal. When the animal is raging, when we think, oh, I have to do this because I want to do this because I'm passionate, you know, either it's like a negative relationship, or I have to buy something, or I have to eat something, or I have to say something, but whatever it is, if we could take a minute and think, or a second and think, the thinking is going to give time for our brain to quench that fire that perhaps is not coming from a good place. Okay. So, all right. A man does not sin unless a spirit of folly enters him. So in this chapter, they're telling us a lot of the cues, or the how to become a Beinoni, right? What are the tools that a Beinoni uses in order to become a Beinoni? So they're telling us he's a realist. He understands himself. He understands that he has an animal soul, and it's, you know, he's not exempt from killing, from murdering, from lying, from cheating. He's not exempt from any of that. He has that inside of him. He has the animal, but he also knows the power of his divine soul. And I think that is the clue. You know, when a person knows their capacities, when they know what I'm capable of, what, not only the bad, but the good, so he can overcome the temptation. That's what it's telling us. Okay. So now we're going to tell us something very important. And it says, a man does not sin unless a spirit of folly enters him. So we have two souls, and we have a divine soul. And divine soul is our to-do list. That is our that's our command that Hashem has given us even before we came to this world. So our soul wants to comply with that. We want to do our mission. That's what the divine soul wants. So how could a person transgress? How could a person either not do its mission or go blatantly against Hashem? That's not natural. It's even called, no, it's not natural for a Jew to go against his mission. It's for those of you that saw the soccer game on Sunday, my husband was telling me how there was a player some years ago. He was from Medellin, and they got to that Copa Latina. It was like that major competition. And in the middle of the game, he made an, how do you call it in English? Un autogol. He made a goalie.
Gol en contra.
Gol en contra. I don't know in English how you say that. He made a goal, but not for his team. He made a goal.
Own goal.
A what?
An own goal.
Own goal for the other team?
He made it for the other team in his own,
Yes.
own goal.
Okay. So I ask you, is that natural? Is that a natural thing to do? No. Did he want to do that? Of course not, right? It's a very sad story. My husband told me that 2 weeks later, when he went back to Medellin, they assassinated him. The mafia killed him, right? Probably the mafia lost a lot of money or whatever, and we could see, look, this poor guy, he was just playing a game, and in the frenzy of whatever, he did something that was totally against his nature, right? So here we're saying, how could a Jew transgress? If we already have been given our command, we have already been enlisted in Hashem's army. The Torah calls us Hashem's army. Our divine soul, that's all it wants to do. How could a Jew go against his very divine self? So in chapter 12, they tell us, no, a man does not sin unless a spirit of folly enters him. So what is the folly? The spirit of folly, first I'll explain. In TV and in the movies, right? When there is a person that kills or does something horrible, and then the police find him and they take him to court, what does his lawyer plead? They plead, my client had momentary insanity. Judge, my client is a really good person. He always does community service. He's an exemplary father and community leader. He's a really, really good person. Just at this moment in his life, for a second, he lost it. So momentary insanity, that's not who he is, right? Isn't that what they plead? And what does momentary insanity mean? It means for a moment he went crazy. He saw his wife with another man, and for a second it was a crime of passion, but he went crazy, but he really didn't mean it. He's really not a guy that kills. He's just a good guy. He loves pets. He takes care of, animals, whatever. The lawyer is trying to plead, my client is good. He just had a slip. It was like a momentary insanity, but that's not who he is, right? That's the same thing that they're telling us here. They're telling us a man does not sin. Any person will not sin unless there's a spirit of folly. What is the spirit of folly? The spirit of folly is like momentary insanity. But pertaining to spirituality, what does it mean? It means, what does our divine soul want? Our divine soul is a piece of divinity. So it wants to be close to its source. It wants to feel its source, like a little child, right? Little child, 1, 2 years old. What do they want? They want their mommy. I have my little grandchildren, one is 2 years old. When the mom is not around, I'm like the idol. I am great. She'll embrace me. We'll have a great time. We'll play everything. If the mom is around, grandma only lasts for a few minutes, right? As soon as she sees her mom, oh, mom, right? They want to be with their mother. We want our mother. That's what we crave, right? That's our security blanket. That's what we want. Okay. Divine soul, that's all it wants. It wants to feel close to God. Even though it has descended to this world where we have said it's doubled and redoubled darkness. God is hidden in this world. We can't see God openly, right? Even though he's like the Purim story, he's everywhere, but we can't see him. He's managing everything, but it's incognito, right? So here the soul is suffering because I can't feel God, right? But I want God. So that's why Hashem gave us the Torah, because when we connect through the 630 commandments, this is like I'm feeling close to God. I feel him. So even though I can't see him here, I feel good, and it makes me feel good. And I'm doing I have a purpose and I have my mission. Okay. So momentary insanity is, or a spirit of folly is, I can go against Hashem for this moment. I can transgress one of these 613 commandments, but it's not going to affect my relationship with God. He and I are tight. She and I, he and I, whatever it is. We are tight. It's not going to affect my relationship. And that's just like what we explain in the movies when they say momentary insanity. Momentary insanity is, this is a really good guy, community leader, father, husband, ideal, whatever. Just he had a slip where really it's momentary insanity because it really doesn't affect who he is, Judge. He really is a good person. So don't judge him on this. Judge him on what he really is most of the time, right? But we know, can the judge really do that? Can the judge really say, oh, okay, momentary insanity, we'll give him a freebie, even though he killed 100 people, he just went crazy for a little bit, he took a machine gun. It was momentary insanity. He really is a really calm guy, right? The judge can't do that. Why? Because whatever we do will affect us, will affect the world. We will have a responsibility. It is real. It's not something that happened and I can say, oh, I'm just going to erase it. We can't erase it. This has a repercussion. Those 100 people are dead. There's 100 families that are devastated, right? Something changed in the world. I can't say I was the same person before and after. So what does it mean pertaining to spirituality? The spirit of folly is, yes, I think I can go against a commandment and I still won't sever, won't damage, won't in any way damage the relationship with Hashem that I have, because that's what I crave the most. But reality is, it will affect it. Something will change, right? As we see with the sota, the woman that was suspected of having been secluded with another man, right? What is part of her consequence or punishment, right? Part of her punishment is that she takes these bitter waters, right? And if she has been with another man, she explodes, the man explodes, because it's telling her, you thought that this was not going to have any consequence. You thought that this wasn't going to have a consequence in your marriage, in your children, in this society, but it does, right? It does, even though it was in darkness, even though nobody saw you, or even, it doesn't matter. Something happened, right? So it was, I've told it in class before, a story with I don't know if this Rebbe or previous Rebbe, a woman had been with another man than her husband. She came home and her child had fallen from the crib and broke his foot. So when she went to the Rebbe told her, that night that you were with another man, when you came home and the child fell from the crib and broke his foot, that was a consequence of what you did. So spirit of folly is thinking, I can tell this lie, I can do this lashon hara, I can cheat, and it's not going to affect my divine soul, my divine relationship with Hashem. And that's the spirit of folly. So how can we see it also in, a different analogy? A person that is in a diet, like Weight Watchers, and they're counting all their calories. Now there's an app, I think. They count all their calories. So, they ate super well. And then at 12 o'clock at night, they come home, they come down to the kitchen and they grab an ice cream or whatever. Why do they do that? Why does a person do that, right? Because the spirit of folly is, this doesn't count. Everything, all the calories that I took in during the day and I counted them, those count. But this, at 10 o'clock or 11, it's not going to count. But we know the truth. The truth is that everything counts, right? Calories in, they will add up, right? Are we together, ladies? Yeah? Okay.
Except on Shabbos.
Yeah. So what is it telling us? That inside of us, there's like a dialogue. There's an inner dialogue with our divine soul and our animal soul. And our animal soul, what did they say? The two souls are like Yaakov and Esau. Yaakov and Esau were twins, right? The two twins from Rivka. And as they grew older, Esau became very adept at hunting. But hunting wasn't just with his spear or with his hands or with his tools. Esau became very adept in hunting with his mouth, which means very cunning. And if we see where that comes from the snake. The snake doesn't go in a straight path. The snake slithers like this. And that is like, it tries to confuse us. So the nature of the animal is confusion, right? What's right, what's right is seen as wrong. What's wrong is seen as right. Temptation is, don't worry about it. This is going to be good, even though it's prohibited, right? But, like fake news, what we're seeing today. The fake news is that's Esau, that's the snake, right? Okay, so a man does not sin unless a spirit of folly enters him. Thus our sages describe the desires of the animal soul as folly. Hence, they are automatically banished by the wisdom of the divine soul that is in the brain. So even though the divine soul is foolish and it will try to sell us, a used car, this is the best car, it'll try to sell us an idea, right? We have to use our brain, because the brain, the clarity in the brain will dispel that, will shine the light on that foolishness. But so how do we strengthen the brain, right? If my brain has such capacity, and if my brain is my center of like my control tower, and it's so important because it's what's going to help me dispel the darkness and the foolishness of my animal. It's telling us many things. First, I have to feed it right. I have to give it Torah, so I know what are the values. Otherwise, I don't know. If we don't know Torah, we don't know our right hand from our left hand. We don't know what is goodness and what is not goodness, right? The society in Sodom, for them, it was even in the bylaws. that you don't feed a poor man, you don't feed a stranger, you don't give tzedakah. Why? Because they were so rich that if you give food to a poor person, the poor persons, they're going to tell each other, and then everybody's going to come to them, and then they're going to become poor. So they can reason it away. Nevertheless, by doing so, by being cruel, by sanctioning cruelty, they gave away the very raison d'être, the reason of being that Hashem put them in this world. That's what led to their death. That's why Hashem destroyed Sodom, because you can reason all you want about how evil is good, but there's ultimate good and there's ultimate evil, and there will be reckoning day. So it's telling us, first we have to feed our brain Torah, so we know what is divine goodness and divine evil, right? But then we also have a responsibility of maintaining our brain in optimal condition. So, Chas v'shalom, when people do drugs, right? And drugs ultimately will alter the brain. And so then they're going to be at the mercy of their animal soul, because the brain is not going to have power over them. There's a story of the Rebbe when he had, I don't know, he was very, very sick, and they were treating him in his house in 770, and then the doctors came and they said, we can no longer treat him in the house. We have to take him to the hospital. But in order to take him to the hospital, we have to sedate him, right? So we have to give him some drugs, so he will be like sedation. And they asked the wife, the Rebbetzin, and she said, I can't give you permission for that, because my husband the Rebbe has never been not in control of himself. So if you give him those drugs that will alter the brain waves and he won't be in control of himself, that's not what he wants. And they tried to persuade her, but she wouldn't relent. Later on, they realized that if they would have moved him to the hospital, it would have been worse for him. But it's the idea that I need to take care of my brain. So it's not only, right, do I have to feed it Torah and mitzvot? Do I have to make sure I don't take any bad substances that can alter my brain, right? But it's not only what I take in my mouth, it's ideas. The ideas that I see and I learn have to be Torah abiding ideas. That's why it's so evil what is happening today in not only the higher institutions of learning, right? Where the professors are teaching ideas completely against Torah and against truth. But these higher institutions are trickling down into elementary schools, into kindergartens, into high schools. So this is the confusion of the idea. So then people are not going to have the ability to really use their mind to control their heart. Okay. Okay, so all right, so I'm going to leave the Tanya here, okay, with these two concepts, and we're going to do a little bit of Sefirot, okay, and now we have explained already in this class the 10 Sefirot. There's 3 intellectual and 7 emotional, and in this book, that this is the first year that I'm using it, it goes on to explain that there's Sefirot that are in the conscious Sefirot, and then there's Sefirot of the subconscious Sefirot. And the subconscious will influence our consciousness. So in the subconscious, it says that we all come programmed, as we have said. We want Okay, we have a desire. Desire is from the subconscious. And from the subconscious desire, then that's where a thought will originate, right? Because that's when I desire something, it's very, very deep inside of me. Why do we desire something? Is right. Why does a person, one desires red, one desires blue, one desires different desires, right? It's because it's coming from the subconscious of a person. And then there's a process where the subconscious comes into the consciousness, into the conscious chokhmah, which is the first part of our brain that receives information. And when that happens, there is like an electrical moment. It's like a spark of a burst of energy that happens to us, right? When we get an idea, when we get a desire to do something, and now, I have that idea. It's like a burst of energy. And it explains why do we feel that burst of energy? Because that is like the subconscious moment where it comes into consciousness and it produces that burst of energy. Okay, so what this author does, which is very, very nice, is that he gives examples so we can understand these concepts a little bit better. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so this is called the Ratzon. The Ratzon is the desire, and Ratzon means, it's like Ratza is to run. Okay, so it's that desire, because when we get a desire, like we want to run with it. Okay, for instance, Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, it's called Eretz because it's from the root of Ratza, because the land itself wants to run to do Hashem's will. Okay, so the land, that's why it's called Holy Land, because the land is like rushing. Its sole desire is to serve its maker. Okay, so that's the Ratza. So inside of us also there's this desire. Okay, now it's gonna talk about this, and we're talking now about the subconscious. Okay, so it says like this. Okay, second. Okay, there is this, he gives this example of a school teacher. His name is Simon. And he gets a desire to teach the students in a different way, in a far out way, in a way that has never been implemented. And he's seeking to motivate his students, right? So he finds this new approach. Whatever, maybe he's gonna go on school field trips. Maybe it's gonna be an open classroom. Maybe there's gonna be instead of lessons in the board, it's gonna be like, let's act out the lesson, right? Drama. So different ways. Okay, Simon begins a new approach to teaching his students in the early stages of implementation. So okay, he gets this desire. And then there's steps, right? Because now I have an idea, but now I have to implement it. So there are many steps in implementing it. He's very excited, right? As we said, there's an excitement. However, at some point during the process, doubts begin to enter his mind, right? So I have a new idea. I want to implement a new way of teaching, right? And now, because it's taking steps, it's not like in 1 second I can change the classroom. It's taking, I have to get permission from the faculty. I have to get the, if it's going to be field trips, I need to get the bus, and I need to get permission slip from the parents, and I need to tell it, and I need to find where to go. And there's many steps in implementing an idea. So in the process of the steps, he's getting doubts. right? Is this new concept really going to work? Is it really that much different from what I have already done? Perhaps I should have chosen a different idea and approach. So as we see, this happens to us many times, right? We have a new concept, a new desire, but in implementing it, it's going to take steps. This happens to me like Erev Shabbat. Friday, I say, okay, I'm gonna make a new dish. And I get so excited, we're gonna make a Shabbat that's totally different, right? Maybe this happens Wednesday or Thursday. And I get so excited and I said, oh, it's gonna be so much fun. And then I have to do the research and the recipes and then buy the thing. And by the time that I said, oh, why did I do that? Maybe it's not gonna be so good. Maybe I don't know how to cook it, right? Doesn't that happen to us? Also with the children, let's make a new approach of teaching and, we're gonna do, and then we say, oh, why am I doing this, right? Okay, so many steps are required in order to bring a concept to a successful conclusion. It is very common that at some stage of the process, the initial excitement may falter, right? So he's also gonna compare it to a spaceship, right? A spaceship, when it first takes off, there's a lot of energy, right? I think it burns up, I don't know, most of its fuel just on the takeoff, right? And it's a wow. And then as it's going up, what is it losing? It's losing its initial impetus, right? Until what it could happen if it doesn't keep on going up, what's gonna happen? It's gonna go down, right? Okay, a person who suffers from loss of motivation will be weak in his pursuit of whatever project he has chosen. He is unwilling to commit the time and energy needed as he questions the value of his efforts. So what is the root problem? The root problem is that his Yetzer Hara starts to question, is this really good? Why am I doing it? What is my purpose, right? Okay. There is a sense of misgiving in the chosen path. Often, he will find himself pursuing multiple projects. You know what? I'm going to get busy on other things, bouncing from one to the next, lacking the assurance to pursue any one project with sufficient intensity. In some cases, the individual may become increasingly detached, unwilling to commit to any significant initiative in a serious way. Why is Simon losing his motivation and what can he do about it? Okay, so I offer you another example. Rabbi Lipsker, I think this was an analogy that I think the scientist Velvel Green came up with it. And it's like this. In NASA, the astronauts wanted to reach, let's say, a very far away planet, let's say Pluto. And they realized that in order to reach Pluto, it's many, many light years away, more light years than it would take one human being in his lifetime. Let's say it was like 200 or 300 years. So they realized that in order to reach this planet, they had to send a whole families of astronauts in the spaceship. And what's going to happen is that the astronauts are going to have children. The children are going to grow up in the spaceship, and they in turn will have their children. And eventually, they're going to reach the goal, right? And they're going to reach the goal, right? Are we together yeah, okay. So what happens is that, the initial project takes off and everybody's cheering and it's the talk of the world. And what happens 150 years down the road? These children are having children, they're grown-ups and then they're having children and their families. And then one day they lose their impetus and they say, what are we doing in the spaceship? No, we have, this is all we know. We see planet Earth is very far away. Why don't we turn back, right? Where are we going? Like, what are we doing? So they lose their initial impetus, and this is what loses motivation in a person. Okay, and so the motivation, the desire, is coming from the subconscious. Then it creates in the consciousness, in the conscious chokhmah, the idea, and then we need many steps in the implementation. So what do we have to do in order to stay motivated, right? Because it's very easy in the steps to lose this initial motivation. Okay, are we together? Okay, so here we go. So diagnosis, it says Hasidus teaches that our desires emerge from the essence of who we are. Desires are the essence, so it's a subconscious. In our essence, the desires are latent and unexpressed. Through the various stages of Ratzon, because there's many stages, we become aware of these desires and struggle to ultimately fulfill them, right? We have a desire and we want to fulfill it. It is the last stage of Ratzon, which is called Malchut Sheberatzon, the actualized will, that activates Chokhmah. It goes into the consciousness, the first Sefirot, inducing it to discover a particular desire and reveal it in the conscious. When there is a loss of Ratzon, we lose touch with the unconscious. The individual becomes lackadaisical and detached. He's plagued by doubt. He has doubts and vacillation. He's saying, why am I doing this? He may easily become bogged down in one area of the process, lacking the sense of purpose and impetus to make this transitional level. Okay, so why did Simon begin to doubt his concept, this teacher? He was going to implement a new way of teaching the children. Why did he lose this drive and questions its validity? Because the gap of time between the birth of the concept and its realization was too great, right? If I have a desire, but it's going to take me so long, or there's always drawbacks, and I don't have enough motivation, I'm going to stop that idea, right? It is overwhelming the force of the initial burst of Ratzon that sparked the project. The nature of a process is linear, step by step. There are setbacks and false starts. And these factors tend to sap, they take away the strength of Ratzon. And here they compare it to the Ratzon to the rocket propulsion, as we said. And the loss of momentum and motivation may occur at any juncture of the process. Okay, so I'm going to jump a little bit. I will tell you something. I'll tell you two examples of this. And one example is that one day, my 9-year-old grandchild, he had a day off from school. So it was a beautiful day. And we said, we can go to the beach and go snorkeling. He loves to snorkel. And he said, he calls me Ba. Ba, there's a place of snorkeling that is really, really great. And it's a little bit far off. It was like a quarter of a mile, perhaps, from where we start. Or almost half a mile. And so it was a beautiful day. And we took our snorkeling gear and everything. We're so excited. And we're walking by the seashore. And all of a sudden, he's, the sun is beating on him. And he starts to say, Ba, it's a little far away. Why are we doing this? Maybe we should go back. I think I got stung by a jellyfish. And so I started to remind him, no, but don't worry, because we're gonna get there. Remember, one day we went there and there was so many fish and so many fish and so many. And so it was the reminding of the motivation of the initial desire that kept him going. And really, this was like one of the highlights that we've had snorkeling. It was like we even got to see like a huge fish, which was Incredible. So a person, when we're losing our motivation, we have to go back and remember what was the initial purpose, right? Okay, so let's see. They're gonna tell us this. Okay. Okay, we're gonna go. It says, when a person begins to doubt that his concept will get him what he wants, he's feeling a disconnection between Chokhmah and Ratzon. So from this, I would believe that from Ratzon that's where faith and bitachon come, because that's what keeps us going, right? Chokhmah first answers the question. So in Chokhmah, says here, just as Chokhmah was the instrument that initially revealed Ratzon, it is also the key to regaining this lost will. So Ratzon is the desire, is the unconscious. Chokhmah is the first part of the consciousness. And now we can use our Chokhmah to aid, to help me come back to my initial desire. How? By asking two questions. First question, what do I want? Right? As we said in the simile of the analogy of the professor, the teacher, what do I want? I want to motivate my students in a new way. My grandchild, he wanted to see fish, right? The people in the rocket ship, they want to reach the new planet because they want a new frontier, right? We could also see it in the analogy of, I was listening to a class about Christopher Columbus, that this speaker was saying how Christopher Columbus was a Jew because he was a Jew, and this was going to be he left Spain at the beginning of the Inquisition, and it was in fact not the money from the Queen Isabel that funded the expedition to find new frontiers, but rather it was the money of the Jews. It was Jewish money looking for new frontiers because they had to go into exile, that funded Christopher Columbus. So we could see Christopher Columbus going on, to the unknown, and he had a purpose, he had an urgency, yet we could see that halfway or midway how mutiny could start, because, oh, we're seasick, oh, this is too rough, oh, this is too difficult, why look for a new frontier, right? But if Chokhmah, if my consciousness will remind me, wait, what was my initial purpose? Oh yeah, they're gonna kill us in the Inquisition in Spain. I have no choice. I need to go and find a new land. That's gonna keep me going, right? So first is, what do I want? Chokhmah's answer becomes the raison d'etre, right? The motivation, the raison d'etre for the process, providing it with vitality and purpose. Having answered the first question, Chokhmah must continually answer a second question. What's the first question? So the first one is, what do I want? And the second question is, will this process satisfy the initial desire? Will this, what I am doing, is it answering plan A? If the methodology of what I'm using, is it answering my initial desire? Because if it's not, then I have to reorganize myself, replant what I'm doing, because the most important was, what do I want? So if the teacher wants to motivate his students and he thought, okay, let's go on a field trip, because it's going to be an out of the classroom experience, but the field trip is boring, or the field trip is it's too costly, or it's unmanageable, right? Then he can say, oh, this process is not really answering my initial desire. So I need to replan, how am I going to do it? Because I still want to motivate my students, right? So these are the two questions that we can continually ask ourselves in order to stay attached and in unison with our subconscious, right? And for it to motivate us, all right? And it's the same thing that we're saying today, because we're saying Ratzon is where bitachon and faith come. And we're here because Hashem sent us. We're here because Hashem wants a better world here. Hashem wants a holy world here. So we need to very much stay in touch with our Ratzon, with our desire of being here, our reason for being here. And even though the steps to getting there, the steps to making this world a holy place, you know, it's sometimes it's so discouraging. We have to ask ourselves again and again, what do I want? And if what I'm doing, is it answering the reason that I'm here? Because if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to, then I have to recalibrate. Okay, so okay, so here it says the stages of treatment, as we said, were those two questions. And these two questions are reconnect to the Chokhmah and recalibrate the process. If the process is not effective, let's look for a better process, but let's not lose the drive, right? Okay. Okay. Okay, here you're going to tell us another thing. It says, it is at this point that Chokhmah must be reset. It is important that Simon, this school teacher, revisit his initial point of conception. What was he planning to do? What was the point? Because the author is going to give some examples. He says, a person wants to be healthy, right? That comes from his Ratzon. I want health, right? So he says, I'm going to go to the gym. So he goes to the gym. This is the Chokhmah. He says, okay, I have to go to the gym and exercise in order to be healthy. What happens if he becomes one of those people that are doing exercise, 24 hours a day? So all of a sudden, instead of gaining health, he's losing health. He wants to be healthy. This was his initial Ratzon, but what he's doing is even counterproductive, right? And we could see it. A person wants to give parnasa to the family. A husband wants to be a provider for the family or wants to take care of the family. So he works at a job, right? And the job is to work, to provide for the family so he can have a good family, right? What happens when a person becomes a workaholic, right? So then the family suffers because they never see him. He suffers because he's not being a person anymore. He's just a worker, right? So there's a disconnect. Wait. What was the initial reason? What was, it's like, if the initial reason for these phones are to get people close to each other, so what happens when you're with your close family or your close friends, and then everybody's on their phone? This that was supposed to bring us close is actually bringing us far, right? It says what is supposed to bring us close actually is detrimental. So then I have to recalibrate. I have to say, wait a second, this has a purpose. The purpose is to bring me close to my loved ones, but I have to put a stop to it. There has to be times, right? When we're gonna eat together, when we're talking, I have to put it away. Otherwise, this apparatus, instead of bringing me close to somebody, is actually bringing me far away, right? So it's like constantly checking, am I still on course? Okay, ladies, I hope you enjoyed it. Any questions? No?
Thank you very much,
Does it make sense?
Vivian.
Because it's a little different from what we've learned about Sefirot, but I think it's very important.
Can you please send the picture of this book?
Yeah. I'll put it- put it in-
And Ratzon is also a Sephira? What is, how do you call it, Ratzon?
Yes, it's a Sephira here. Explicitly, they call it Ratzon Shebechochma. It's a Ratzon, but it's part of the Sefirot that are in the subconscious.
Okay.
What we have dedicated our whole class was to the conscious Sefirot, and this now we're
Okay.
talking about the subconscious.
Okay. Thank you so much. So next
Thank
week
you,
we're gonna
Vivian.
see more unconscious
Yes.
Sephirot? Okay. Thank you
Okay.
so much. Very interesting.
Okay, ladies.
Thank you. Bye
Enjoy.
bye.
Bye.
Gracias.
Con gusto. Con gusto.